when it comes to like agency work on top of that, like you're not going to be there for 25 years, 30 years running an agency. I mean, there is to a point that you do get run down and burned out from it.
What is it that makes us excited? Sure, you can hustle all you want, but that's going to run out of steam. At some point, you'll be like, what am I hustling for?
Have you ever seen the movie Coco? Like that Disney animation movie? One of the main things about it is remembrance and legacy, right? Like that's like the main overarching theme of it. And there was this one character in there that he was fading away because nobody was remembering him.
There's so much to learn from each individual. There's never a person that hasn't had an experience, or very few people, that isn't worth talking about, because there's always something that we don't do ourselves that we could learn from.
Hey, Matt.
Sorry, I was trying to figure out 3 or 4 different things at the same time.
How's everything with you?
It's good. It's good. It's a production world that I'm involved in now. So it's sort of how do I measure effectiveness on a daily basis about production for multiple formats. And I'm trying to get my head around what I want to do when I grow up, which I think is now, since post-sale of agency, becomes a relatively valid question, because being at high level and speaking last week, at the event, it makes you kind of piss your pants a little bit about you're missing the real business, because there's a lot of money being talked about.
I mean, how, if you don't mind me asking, how much did you sell your agency for?
I got the equivalent of a 7-figure out. So.
Oh, that's good. I mean, that's more than what a lot of people kind of hope for,
Well, I'll tell you, it's not easy, because what happens, and this is what happened to me. Let me turn this light off. It's bugging me. Got my TikTok live setup running in the background. So testing out some of the features. I don't know if you've done that or not yet, but I'm just starting to get my head around it. And we do this for a lot of our clients, and I just don't do it for myself, or haven't done it for myself yet. So I'm now trying to get my setup correct. And I started doing this just recently, and it's interesting. We'll see where it ends up. Anyway, long story short, when I decided to sell, it was in 2022, and I told my wife, I said, I really don't want to have another presidency that I'm under for the 3rd term of whoever will be president. I want to get the company sold, before the next election. That was my goal. So I had a goal in mind, and it was pretty damn like line in the sand. Like I want to get it sold, because I wanted to sell, particularly because, not that I was enamored by the fact that I could make 7-figure exit or whatever, which wasn't even part of my conversation. It was the fact that I wanted to move on into other things. And whether or not that's a good idea or not has not been determined yet. But we'll talk about that just briefly for a few seconds, so I can entertain you with the sale process. So first thing I did, any smart business entrepreneur would go out to one of the more prolific people who sell businesses and condition a model where I would provide them with free marketing services to learn how to sell my business. So there's one of the books on my shelf over there someplace, Exit Rich was the name of the company and the book and the person that did it. So we spent quite a few hours talking about how to exit rich, right? And so she was an interesting participant for a few weeks, until she kind of didn't want to do the things I asked her to do, which is to do all the content that I needed for, to do production for her. She said, no, I don't want to do it. I'm busy, blah, blah, blah. So we gave up on her. But I learned from that couple of weeks, because I've been force-fed all of the stuff to learn about her business, read everything, listened to our podcast, and understood the 3 or 4 mantras that need to be scoped out, right? You need to have your financials completely clean. You need to have your process in place where you've got a pitch to sell to somebody. You've got to make your company and your whole process sellable. And then you have to find buyers. Okay,
Yep.
So then I started to work with brokers. I was getting LOIs. I had at least 5 solid LOIs on the table. But each time I went to kind of go down the path of the LOIs, which were other agencies, some venture cap guys, some randos, they all involved, well, you get a certain amount down, and then you get a certain amount paid over time, and then you have a certain bonus amount, and it varies. And so it was kind of a third.
Yeah.
And I was trying to get as much upfront as I could.
Yeah, you're trying to do a clean exit. Like,
Absolutely.
once it's signed, you're out of there.
Correct. And that's ideal for most people, because if you can get the cash up front, you're not worried about these other things. And that's what I kept saying. It's like, I really don't want to know about 3 years or 5 years, which is even more common. Like, where am I going to be in 5 years? Is this company even going to exist? And it, depended on a lot of, there's so many factors that now weigh in when you start splitting these things up into various pieces. But you can get an LOI any day you want for that, because the people are like, they're dime a dozen. They're like, hey, we'll buy your company for 1.2 million. Sure. You get a third up front, 5 years, we'll pay the rest. And then 5 years over that, we'll give you the rest. I'm like, no. So I started to get a little bit better on the front end, but nothing good on the back end. And so my second in command eventually said, hey, why don't I just buy you? And I said, yeah, but with what money, right? Because usually your employees don't have any money.
Yeah.
Well, in her case, which was sort of a luck shot deal, she had won a award, or not an award. She had won a partial case from the government because the fire service went and burned her property and a bunch of other properties down by accident. So she lost 100 acres. Government started paying her checks. She started to get about $1 million to $2 million in repayments. She just wrote me a check. We originally discussed doing it for just 7 figures flat. Okay, just pay me 7 figures, I'm out. And we all agreed, done, signed paperwork, LOI, done. As we got closer, she didn't want to pay it. She wanted to pay half. And then we negotiated the middle. And then I said, well, why don't we do this? I'll take a portion of the accounts. So I took about $30,000 of monthly revenue, and she took the rest, and I got a big check. And that kind of equaled out to a very similar model of about a 70-30 split, which is about 70% upfront. And now I have if you look at the base, I'm making about 10,000 a month of, margin off of the 30,000 that we have. So it'll pay for itself over, as long as I keep the accounts, which is fine. I mean, they're not going to, and we're growing. So, it's like, fine. So it worked out relatively good because I got a pension sort of in a way and a check. So it's both of best worlds. Well, not both. I would like to have a whole check, but in reality, what this kind of let me do is have some flexibility on. Now I have a business. I didn't lose my tax ID. I'm just rebuilding now and starting to become relevant back to the market as I learn like where I want to put my feet down. Now I can't go back and sell to the same types of niche. Who cares? But it is a little bit daunting to go to high level and speak with Keaton Walker and Matt DeSano and Mike Cooch and Rob Bailey and of course Chase is my best buddy there, and we've been buddies since he was in my agency, and all the people that are connected who are making a lot of money off of especially the affiliate space. And it makes you look at what High Level's doing. They got a good infusion. Should I split some of my time, which is why I'm doing this TikTok live, into teaching and training people into agency strategies to get back into affiliate commission nirvana, which if you look at some of the major players in the high level space, they have a real business.
Real robust affiliate business.
Yeah, and it's daunting to see Keaton Walker, especially, who was in my position about a year and a half ago, he had sold his agency a year and a half ahead of me. And he's got 70,000 in affiliate commissions running right now. And so you start thinking like, well, I mean, it's not like there's not people coming aboard High Level on a daily basis. Because I know Chase has some of the numbers that he shares with me, not anything particularly crazy, but saying that, look, if you look at, in general, they're growing by hundreds of accounts per day. They're coming from somewhere. Can you get in the middle of it, right? Which, I've got $1,000 of affiliate commissions already started. So, okay, great. But, I'm still doing coaching and consulting for larger clients, which are fun, because I'm doing, big project work that is interesting. It keeps me entertained. And I've got a little team of 5 or 6 people that, do all the gerrymandering. So there's a bigger echelon arcosphere here. Arcosphere is a company of mine that I stole their name as a verb or noun. So arcosphere of like these things that I sent to you, which are, look, it's beyond the agency businesses at this point, right? So it's, if I didn't do anything, I'd be set for a long time, not worrying about, paying mortgages or, I've got a pretty decent lifestyle that's not crazy expensive, so I could coast if I wanted to. But there's a lot of things that I want to do legacy wise, which I passed on to you, which are those 10 pillars of what I called living louder, which is how do I have an impact? And I've changed a lot of my health strategy and a lot of my thoughts on things that I want to do from a material standpoint, not buying or, creating some sort of garage full of cars, but more skill attainment is my interest, particular. Stage presence is something I'm obviously involved in quite a bit, and I like that piece, along with building out couple of different avenues within this marketing business where there's opportunity to help grow other businesses and grow myself, right, to where I think we could get to 100,000 a month again through the different business channels. And then the other things of building a mastermind of people that I want to be around, which was kind of cool because I kind of sat down with all these people for the last when I was in Dallas, which is fantastic to be with everybody and to roundtable ideas and to discuss sort of like what's the point at some point. And then really to think about legacy strategy with a book and continuing this process of building out a mantra for that business and even making that potentially a coaching business, right? To say, hey, I'm going to go do these things. If you want to come with me, here's my 10 pillars that I'm going to be doing. It's sort of the second book I'm writing. I'm like, I have to write the first one first, but it's already been written. I just haven't published it yet, and it needs to be updated with all the new things. But so I've got Profit Engines as a book, which is a marketing training book in 13 chapters and has everything that I've learned. And then there's this next step, Living Louder thing, which is more esoteric and starts to develop a more legacy structure. So that's what I sent over to you in the Facebook chat, which you look at and go, oh, this is great. Like, I know I'm just starting to get my head around it, and I'm trying to decide how do I want to format that And is that something I want to actually say, hey, I have this other coaching thing where I'm trying to, do this accountability strategy. If you want to go with me and do what needs to be done in the accountability stuff, I'll kick your ass just for the hell of it, because I'm doing the same thing. I'm kicking my own ass. And sometimes people need that.
Yeah, I agree.
It's very difficult. I mean, as a older 50-year-old person, to keep up with what I'm going to be attempting to do or have done. Look behind me, I'm still on stage with my heroes, still recording with my heroes. So I've got another sector of my world that is totally independent on getting my skills higher in order to fit the stages that I need to do in order to make the goals I have on that side. There's a lot to think about. And it bothers me every single day that I'm not further ahead. And a part of that is because of my decision, I think, to stay in the agency business for as long as I did, just to, I think sit and spin and make an easy 20 grand a month just by sitting and doing nothing. And that's good too. Meaning that's not bad to, make a decent living. But at some point, as you know, there are variants in topics that you start to think about, because as I did with my predecessor or my second in command, we got to a certain point where the company knew I was wanting to sell, and they started to say, we're transitioning leadership. And I think, to my detriment, I think that caused a bit of consternation, because you start to see deflection of like your ethos in what you had built. And for sure, that path of sort of, hey, dad's leaving, like getting a divorce and he's not coming back, was difficult for about 2 months, I think, after I sold the business. And it really had an impact. I think anybody who goes through a sale, unless they have something immediately that they're doing, sort of has to leave their family and kill their darlings.
Yeah.
So does that answer about the sale thing?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's like, I'm just like dissecting a lot of the stuff that you said. And one of the things that I kind of picked up, like basically like your ethics about a whole lot of things and how you handle things, right? Because you were talking about that book, the Exit Rich. And the fact that she didn't hold up her end of the bargain in order for you to be able to do what you need to do in order to keep your end of the bargain, right? And that you
that's
called
a lot of customers, though. It's not just her. I mean, I've had several customers fail just recently because they refuse to help themselves. And I what can I say? It's where we are in the market. It's like either you want to show up or you don't, and that's okay. Yeah. You don't have to show up. But then you either have the choice of having, degraded brand issues, or you get AI and have somebody do it for you, I guess. I mean, again, the people I'm working with now, they want to show up and like they're feeding us and they're saying, here. I'm like, great.
Yeah, here's more content. Yeah.
As long as that happens, the validity of what we can do with that is unique, because obviously with high level and the skilled set of Filipinos in film and editing, and we can chop up and get it out the door and engage with it and force engagement and run ads, and as long as we have content, you're pretty much good to go. Doing that consistently.
So basically, from what I got, because you really haven't said exactly what you did in that agency, but I'm assuming from what you're talking about, it was a video production style agency that you worked with in order to create content for social media and for ads. Is that correct?
No, that's what I'm doing now.
So
before that, we were doing a niche. We were mainly in the med spa niche.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I started the company in 2012-ish as a general agency, moved to a medical agency in 2017, moved to a med spa agency at around 2020, and then did that for 2.5 years before I sold, roughly.
And med spas is a good niche. Like it's a difficult niche, but it's a good niche to get into because not a lot of people know how to do it correctly.
Well, it depends. So here's what I would recommend. If you're looking to go into a niche, you have to either support the niche by hiring the people who are going to work in the niche, which is what I did, or you have to enjoy the niche. Now, the last thing in the world that I could care about is med spas. When I started the business, I didn't even know what that was. I still haven't even probably walked into one, right? So besides my clients, right? Who I have to go and see because I have to, get their stuff. But I hired a lot of people from the industry who loved it and are thriving today because they've grown through the framework of this. And I shouldn't say it's not something I didn't like. It was just something that was okay. It was just like any other business. I mean, to me, business is a business. My original customer bloom has all sorts of businesses, from oil sales guys to tension strength guys to painters and lawyers and doctors and everything. Yeah. It didn't really matter to me. I mean, business is just business. And that's kind of my framework today, but today it's more system infrastructure, coaching, and providing guidance where someone can come to me and say, how do I get from being a zero to a hero? And, we've got now some case studies that are pretty amazing what you can do and turn around within a very short period of time if you hit the right stride, we've taken a guy who was minus 20 profit to now 70,000 plus in profit in a couple of months, and now almost hitting 300,000 in revenue. And he's ecstatic, right? But he's ecstatic because this is stuff that we did. Like, if we weren't there, he would still be negative. That's a big question mark about like what happens to people who just don't get the right help. So I think that interests me from a human aspect, because you've got people who are saying, thank goodness, you guys came and saved me. Not only saved me, but now I'm growing and hiring, and it's like they see the end of the light, they can pay off their debt. It's like, it's a great feeling to have that recourse. And that didn't happen in my agency. My agency was just like, how many accounts per month could we put on to the bill? Well, we only 35 new businesses that shoved into our system this month. Okay, let's do 40 next month and get back to where we should be, because I have 100,000 in payroll.
For you, it's a little bit different than you helping out your clients.
and so that's a great thing, right? To have even 100,000 in payroll, you must be doing something good. Yeah. But to me, I think after a while, you look at that and go, okay, this is great. We could certainly keep doing this, and I could have kept doing that. But at a certain point, as I said before, after 10 years or so of doing the agency business, you not necessarily think about doing another thing, or there's not a shiny object. It's sort of like, I need to complete this. I need to have an exit, because I think that's part of the world of business. You have to do an exit. You have to do something that you said, hey, I completed the task. I built a business, grew it to Inc. 5000. We got on the Inc. 5000, had multi-million, sold it, right? And I think that value of having that experience is probably worth more than continuing it on forever and ever and ever and being frustrated by just not ever exiting because you didn't take the advantage of, putting yourself in the crosshairs of all the things that need to happen when you sell.
Yeah, and the thing is too, like when it comes to like agency work, on top of that, like you're not going to be there for 25 years, 30 years running an agency. I mean, there is to a point that you do get run down and burned out from it. And
many don't make it past the first 2 years or 3 years,
Yeah, so you have to make a decision, like what you did. Like, do I exit or do I stay here in the daily grind of doing this? And a lot of people, after like, maybe 5 to 10 years, if they grow to a substantial size, is let me exit because my next step is probably going to be coaching, or my next step is probably going to be starting a SaaS company where I could be a little bit more flexible. Because, I mean, with agency work, a lot of times your face is what gravitates, and then clients end up needing you because you're the one in the meetings, you're the one setting up the accounts, and that draws a lot from you. But when you move to, hey, a coaching or a SaaS play, you could actually exit from that situation a little bit more. Your phone's not ringing from clients, hey, I need this, hey, I need that. And I think that that's usually the play that a lot of people do after the agency work.
Well, we'll see. And that's why I said now I'm determining which model. And again, since I was with everybody over the last week, I left the high level event with more questions than I came in with. And I think that it's par for the course, because as I said, I met with all the industry guys that are sort of my, not necessarily heroes, but they're definitely North Stars. They are people that have been there, done that, and grown their businesses in different ways, right? So everybody's a little bit different. You know, Mike Cooch is different from Rob Bailey, is different from Matt DeSano, which is different from Alex Shalinsky. I mean, there's a million, all these guys are there, right? So we see all the different models, and they all play different little quadrants. It's not really one and the same. And because I was on the agency panel, which was interesting because I was talking with the other agencies, obviously there, that were saying, you know, then they're all doing some different growth. And we had time with the SaaS panel as well. But I think you looked at like everybody and you said, everybody came from a different source. You know, I came from corporate, so I was a corporate guy for God knows how many years, a lot. And, you know, I left the corporate world in a different state of mind than I think what most corporate people did. Was, you know, I had read the 4-Hour Workweek book and said, okay, I'm doing this 4-Hour Workweek thing. And I just started just doing consulting. I just, you know, went into the business. It wasn't even marketing. It was just general consulting. I would talk to businesses about cost savings, and you know, eventually marketing sort of was a natural outflow. And then that became, let's just say, a path that was the least of all narratives at that time, in the early to mid 2010s. That was, you know, it was, you couldn't not help because people were asking. Now it's different, right? Now there's an army of kids who are building their agencies, and most of the clients have been approached 19 times by different agencies who are out there. So the question mark is, you know, and what we kind of came to the conclusion, a lot of us, is that you know, even for high level, how do you grow, you know, a base? They have what, 40 or 50,000 installations now, and or agencies, or whatever the term is today, users. And of course, they've got 1 million sub accounts under that, or some crazy number, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, and I guess, you know, you go, well, how do you now grow? And if you think about it, even high level, who's a good bellwether of like, okay, they're positioning themselves for a purchase eventually by either Salesforce or HubSpot or something like that eventually. I mean, obviously, this is what the investors are looking at. They're looking to try and 10x their $100 million or $200 million drop, right? So they want to get these guys to 2 billion or whatever, and then go say, hey, Google, want to buy these guys? You needed that CRM, right? Oh yeah, let's pick them up. Okay, great. You can, on the way out, we'll take the finder's fee of a couple $100 million for this deal. It makes you think, if they've got the money and they're going to be perpetuating this story, the CRM being this clandestine answer to every single thing you want to do, including making your toast in the morning at some point. Where are they going to get the customers from? And what's going to be the balance of where you should put your efforts to follow them? And part of it, I think, is getting into the networks of people that have got businesses where they're either coaches of some pod of business, whether it's a fitness coach or a cooking guru or whatever. Pick a niche where there's a interest and interface with them on some portion of high level that would interface with their downline, and say, hey, we'll work together and build out this model that you can sell to your downline of 100 or 500 or 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 people that are in your club or whatever you want to call it. And that's a real interesting way to go to market. And I think that's how this is going to start to expand, which is to try and find ways to go into these networks of networks. Because the agency's sort of business, I mean, how many more med spas can you approach? You could obviously just continue to build more better models in the niche world of either med spas or dentists or lawyers or oil garage door companies, whatever. But there are already these pre-built networks. And I think that's where I'm thinking there's an opportunity, and that's what I was discussing with a lot of the guys there. So from a head-on level, finding those networks is the thing that I'm sort of trying to evaluate as an opportunity. And that's kind of already where I'm playing to some degree with one of the clients that we're working with, which has 147 locations, and they're installing high level and connecting all these peripheral softwares, and we're doing the integration and charging consulting fees to get things aligned, and working with them on a daily basis or a weekly basis to connect all these networks, right, which are their locations. But to me, I think if you looked at the general purpose of like, what do we do with high level, and how does it grow, and how do you make money in this business? There are so many variants that came out of that conversation for the last week because of the different approaches to the market. So there isn't going to be one way that I think that say, hey, I want to go this way, and that's where I'm sort of saying, well, maybe you just bet in different fields. Like, it's like the stock market. Well, I'm going to take the ETF for the national, the international. I'm going to take an ETF for the Fortune 500, or Inc. 500. I'm going to go do the or top 500 S&P, and then I'm going to do a national or global market, so I can have all these things plus bonds. So you have like 4 or 5 different things. So things are going up, down, whatever, but you're still moving ahead all at once. So I think maybe that's the path that I'm going to have to think about, which is just to dabble in affiliates because it just makes sense. Look behind me. I'm just going to run TikTok and say, hey, if you want the 30-day free trial, just click on this thing and I'll teach you. I'll give you a free hour coaching. Very easy to get people to do that, and then teach some courses and stuff. And I think the local businesses just come to us naturally, or come to me naturally, because they've known me, and I can just put out an email and say, hey, I'm still doing this stuff, you need help. And I know the last agency screwed you over because the kid who was 2 days into the business doesn't know, but he'll do it for free, but that doesn't last too long, and then it gets screwed up, and now you're mad. So come to me because I'm an old soul, or an older person who knows a lot of this stuff. And then the other thing is the SaaS business, which I'm very fascinated in, with potentially providing some very simple services that someone just wants to have in their business, which could be simple as just reputation management, or something similar to what we've done for a million years, which is just to set up a simple little CRM for them that runs their email. And those, there's a little bit in there, and it's tough to make a decision right now. And I've always said the same thing to everybody who's asked me, is like, well, what do you do? I'm like, well, I think you do what you know, which is that you know a lot about the business, you talk to a lot of people, and you'll just find opportunities. And then eventually something will be like, hey, let's repeat this one that's really working really well. So again, I think that takes time. And that's what took time in the business that I did before, which is I never got to a certain point where I was like, oh, well, let's just go repeat this, rinse and repeat this thing. It just eventually came to me, and it made sense. And then we dug in, and then we started shoveling as fast as we could.
Nice. I know you spoke a little bit about legacy, which I really like, and I think that's like that should be at the core of everybody. It's like, have you? I know it's kind of weird to kind of think of it in this way, but have you ever seen the movie Coco, like that Disney animation movie?
Coco?
Yeah. So
bits and pieces of it. I know what you're talking about.
So the main, like one of the main things about it is remembrance and legacy, right? Like that's like the main overarching theme of it. And there was this one character in there that he was fading away because nobody was remembering him, right? And that, when I first saw that, that really struck to me. It's like, you know, you would want to have that legacy. You would want people to continue to remember you for as long as possible, so that, you know, your values being spread upon as many people as possible, and you're still making a difference even after you're not here, right? And I think that that's kind of crucial for like everybody, right? So like I like the direction that you're kind of going, that and wanting to step into, you know, writing the book and writing, wanting to do these things that will provide a legacy for after that, you know, once you move forward, that people could still carry on and learn from you, and still be able to use the skills and the talents that you've been able to learn, and pass that on to other people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at behind me. There's already a legacy of 5 albums, videos of shows. You know, for me, I think one of the things that was challenging, because I came from a family that my father played music and stuff like that, but we don't have any, never wrote, you know, songs. He never got things on video. We never put out anything. I put out, you know, masterpieces at this point, considered for me. I mean, I would subjectively say our stuff is good enough that you look at it and go, I mean, even the promoters that we work with are like, yeah, you guys are like a real act now. And, you know, I've had the chances to warm up for my heroes and work with my heroes, which is a big thing for me, which was to interplay. And I can remember a couple months ago, or maybe it was half a year ago, being in the studio with Scott Sherrard from Little Feat, and we were working on one of the album's vocals, and he was singing backups, and I was doing the front end. And he said to me, he goes, oh, you know what we should do, man? We should put together a band between me, the drummer from Foghat, you, and we can go out. And I'm like, even the fact of him saying that,
Yeah,
was beyond my recognition of, like, we're actually at a point where, you know, the songs are, because he was playing slide on them, and, you know, he played with Greg Allman, and you know, we've sort of interplayed with some of the people that are in the ecosphere of the Southern rock world, where, you know, we've warmed up for 38 Special and George Thorogood and Blackberry Smoke and all these guys. We kind of like know a little bit of each other now, so it's kind of like we're in that space. And so legacy wise, I think you can go into the entertainment side, or, you know, try and also become something that's relative. Again, this is all sort of esoteric to some level, which is, you know, a hard thing to even understand, but there is a point of where I'm trying to combine this, right? Which is how do I bring both of these worlds together? And so I said to backstage after we were jumped off of the high level stage, it was a substantial, you know, sized event, and you know, all the smoking fireworks and all the stuff that they're doing, which is kind of fun. But anyway, so I'm back with Sean, and Sean, obviously the owner of High Level, and I said, Sean, I said, I really want to do a local event, because what's happening is that these people have to pay thousands of dollars to come to Dallas. They have to spend money on a hotel. I mean, you're in for $5,000 at minimum coming down here.
Easy.
Like you have no idea, like, how many people are in my feed crying and complaining that I'm having the best time in the world, and that blah, 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 and that they would love to be there, except for they don't, blah, 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 blah. And I said, why can't we just do regional based location, high level events, and bring up the don't make it like a little hotel, but we'll do the same thing. We'll have all the fanfare and the smoke and the lights and everything. It will look great. It'll be like, it will be exciting, and people will go home and they'll say, I went to this event, it's the most amazing thing. But make them small, little regional, you know, 50 to 100 people, so that, you know, it's special enough so that you have to buy a ticket, that you know, you're limited, so that people have to buy it, or they won't get in. But also that it's a day of learning that they have to actually pass to get the discount off the ticket, so that they go through a learning transition where at the end they have to be able to have learned something instead of listening to the fluff and the stuff that happens. Look, these big conferences have, hundreds of thousands of dollars dedicated just to speakers that are rah, rah, rah. But this would be an intensive. It would have the same level of gravitas where we would be like, okay, and you're coming out, this is great. We'll make $1 million. But we're first going to learn all these things as part of it. And you're going to go through a day of this, and maybe there'd be a second day where there would be an event. But the whole concept was that it would also give them an indication of how to build the regional areas so that you could bring through some sense of getting pods. And Florida, obviously we don't need Dallas, but in Utah, in that area where there's a lot of concentration of people, California, Chicago, whatever, Charlotte, in Northeast would be New York, so that we could start to build some of the what I would consider gravitas towards the business, so that you could even bring a bigger crowd back because they'd be excited to go to the main event, and that you could actually have more engagement regionally that would focus inevitably on the national brand and as they grow. And I said, have my band play at it, and it would be a rock event. And Sean said to me, he goes, I know, because I heard that you wail. I'm like, finally, he's recognized it. It's 2 years. And I said to him, I said, Sean, I've been pitching you this for years. You just never really listened. I said, this is the first time, because obviously he saw me on the stage, and he's like, it was very introspective to talk to Chase, who was my original VP of Ops for 5 years, on a panel that we're talking about our existence. And it was very interesting, as we were just like, I think you already know the answer to this question. But the point what I was trying to say is that I would love to combine those two worlds. So you can have entertainment and education at the same time. And now that would be a legacy worth really looking at, trying to integrate, because that's something that I don't see. It's unique. It's something that, if you go into like the marketing gurus of the world, like they'll say, Seth Godin would say, remarkable. What's remarkable? That would be remarkable to me.
Yeah, to have that kind of mixture of those two elements, right, inside of an event like that. And I actually like your idea of having it more localized, right? Because here's the thing, and like I actually did this for like a little stint, and this is just real estate agents. Like I was trying to work with real estate agents, and they all have their brokerages, they all have their additional, realtors or brokers inside of it, and things like that. And they all need a CRM at the end of the day. Like sometimes the company will give it to them, sometimes not. Sometimes these guys are like freeloading, but that's just like real estate agents and brokers. But what about the hair salons, that have multiple locations around in a city? What about the plumbing company that has multiple locations around? Like that could be a huge benefit to those kinds of local companies, and they don't know about Go High Level enough in order to go out to Dallas for that, right? But if you kind of bring it to them and let them know, like, hey, this is a marketing conference, you have more than one location. This is something that could benefit for you guys. You could draw a lot more of a local crowd, like what you said, into those regions, and make it a little bit more expanded, right? You actually get a whole lot more coverage doing something like that for those kinds of businesses that would definitely need it in a local aspect.
Well, I think you'd probably find that a majority of the people who would go to these would be higher level agencies that just can't fit the time to go onto a Dallas trip, that would love to go and hang out and have one of the two of the owners or Chase or somebody at this event, so they could just be part of the world. Because there's a big family that you walk into when you go to High Level's Dallas event. You're literally walking into like everybody who I know you and you and you and you. Well, yeah. I do, because I've been around for a while, but there's a feeling there of camaraderie as well. And that's the other part of it, which is that you actually, you become, especially the lonely entrepreneurs who are out there, who are, slaving away and doing their agency and, really don't pick their head up, but up until the point where they have to get up out of their desk and, do something other than talk to a customer or talk to their team. There's a lot of that too, which is that there's an inference here about partaking in the network effect of becoming part of a larger whole, beyond the normal, hey, there's larger opportunities with, multi-location niche players. I'm sure that would be part of the world too. But I think you'd find that a majority of these people would be somewhat related in the industry of wanting to go to these like events, but just not willing to put that amount of down payment into a ticket first, and then second, even getting the time away from their life to spend 5 days away, where a small regional, that's why I was pitching, like it's also a smaller time frame, right? Because part of the issue, and this as well, is that we're really dealing with this high focus of energy that you need to also bring to these events, because it's constant talking, constant back and forth of ideas, and but again, we're kind of veering off the path of maybe more the larger conversation that we started with the legacy stuff. But I think the value of the piece of the legacy part that you're talking about can be fleshed out into multiple different ways to encompass it. What I was talking about was the goal, what I would think is that how can you blend these different types of education and entertainment together in a better way that formats up with keeping it exciting and keeping it remarkable so that it spreads, because that's what they're trying to get, which is that high level's great, it spreads to a degree, but there still isn't sort of the what I would call ability for people to touch and feel it in reality. And that's why I think from a being vulnerable about this whole thing, which is that I've always thought that at some point my worlds would collapse into like something, and this may be the first time to do that. That's why I thought from a legacy standpoint that would be interesting for a conversation. Anyway, so we should veer back into the main thrust of the conversation.
No, absolutely. I mean, I know we've been on for like almost an hour. It's been an amazing conversation. I mean, would you be open, like I'm actually starting a podcast, would you be open in taking part of that? The main purpose of the podcast is a marketing podcast, but it's to highlight more of the struggles of how you got to where you're at with either be marketing strategies or your business strategies and things like that. And showing that, like, people like yourself or, other high profile people inside of the marketplace, they're real people, right? Because a lot of times we look at these people and like, we look at them like at a higher standard, and sometimes we feel like they're unreachable, but they've gone through the struggles and the hurdles of starting a business or starting a marketing strategy that now they lean on heavily, that kind of catapulted them into where they're at right now. Is that something that you'll be interested in?
Well, you could use this as a podcast. I mean, this is more information than you probably expected just by defining like what I'm up to, because that sometimes is more important to people, like because they want to see like what would happen if I sold my agent, where would I go, what would I do, what the thing. Exactly. So you've got you could just or we could both use this as a podcast. I mean, there's certain questions in here that I think a lot of people want answered from me, which, I'm still grappling with, right? Which is, what do you do next? Yeah. And value wise for your end user listener or end user watcher, people will find something that resonates with them. And again, this is just as good as any other podcast or any other piece of content, and you've got it recorded. So I would just, chop it up, or we'll both chop it up. It's just, there's plenty of content in here. I mean, that's the biggest thing, right? What we talked about that from the very beginning, which is that people fail to ignite or fail to lift off because they just don't provide any relevant access to themselves. And it works the same. It reminds me very much, and there's a book titled that, which is Failure to Launch, which is really talking about today's adult male teenagers, where they've been circumscribed to being behind a desk, and COVIDized them to death to keep them there and not leave. And they're chained to the screens and dopamine addiction that's been created by what has been transpiring over the last couple of years. And that failure to launch is the exact same thing that's happening to clients. Is they fail to pick their head up and give us content, and then they never get found. And so I'm doing my darndest to try and get myself to even provide access to me, because there's stories that need to be heard, whether they're business or education or entertainment, like I do with the music stuff. You know, it's sad. There's a lot of people that will go to their grave without telling their story, and there's so much to learn from each individual. There's never a person that hasn't had an experience, or very few people, that isn't worth talking about, because there's always something that we don't do ourselves that we could learn from. And it may be just as simple as a sentence or two that breaks the ability for someone to see through the other side. I'll give you an example, because I talk a lot. There's a book I'm reading about, I'll tell you that, I'll give you 2 sentences before this. If you listen to Andrew Huberman, which is a guy who's a doctor, an optical doctor, or he's a human behavior specialist, and he's also on the optical side, eyes. And he interviewed a woman on his show that was talking about visual cues, and how much we get affected by visual cues. If you go into a 7-Eleven, you sit there and you go up to the front end, and all of a sudden you're buying the first things that you see, because they're right in front of you. You're buying the doohickey that is right there, and the candy bar, and the iPhone cord, and the things that you so there's a peripheral vision that we all have. And I think that when we get used to putting relative value, and this is why people use vision boards, right? Because they'll see something in front of them that they want to attain, whether it's a picture of a guy who's strong, or a money number, or whatever it might be that can give you some peripheral vision on what you're trying to attain. This factor that we stare into these computer screens all day, and we're really directed by whatever sort of we're near. So how do we change the narrative of what we want to be near? And I'm thinking about this all the time. Like, how do I do X? Well, if your influence is being driven, and you can rearrange this goes back to my original Living Louder thing, which is, if we can rearrange what we're concentrating on by having it in front of us, and directing ourselves into this model, because I think many of us get distracted quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I think almost to the point where people will look up after an hour and a half of staring at some random political thing, or random thing, fishing thing, or whatever, and they're like, what happened? It's dark out. Like, because your peripheral vision is just, it's so you have to go like this and look at the bigger picture to see what you're going, both near and far. And Think Slow and Fast, which is another book. So I think that directive of understanding how do you manage that process, and I just started doing this, which is also looking at what's going on, what am I doing at every point in my day, writing it down, physically writing what I'm doing.
I do the exact same thing.
Right. So and so being aware of even what you're doing is like another huge cue of determining what makes the most sense for your validation of what you're trying to accomplish. And a lot of people, I think, spend many days getting frustrated. I know I have. On going back and saying, how do I score my day? Like, what did I do to move the ball forward? And it's super frustrating when you look back and you see the things that on your calendar where you, and I put X's where I don't know what, I can't remember what I did, right? And it's like, there's certain periods where you go, what was I doing? And I think these are those periods when, again, at least for me, where I'm losing hours of a day because I've gotten off track, and I just didn't know it because my vision is in the screen and it's being sucked into something, and I don't know what it is. I couldn't figure it out for the life of me, but I wrote down XXXX in these 45 minutes. Where was I? And those are the things, I think, when we start to look back and see patterns. And this is why I think it's important to think about how much our eyes, if, again, sorry, people who have got limited vision or listening to this, maybe, I don't have capability to see or blind. But the reality is that there's so much that we do in a day where we're being just driven from unconscious behavior. And I really do think that is a huge killer of our time. And my point is that if you want to do these 10 things that I talked about with Living Louder, which is legacy and skills and all the things, you're going to have to really tighten up your planning, especially at my age where I'm in the late 50s. If I don't get out the door and get onto the pavement and start running or go to the gym, I'm going to lose half of my battle just by not getting myself away from these things. And the drive of getting that done, it has to be exciting, meaning that you have to wake up and want to get to these things and understand that, there's a reason why you're getting up. And I think putting that all together has been, kind of an education for me over time to build some of the things that I'm trying to do that I could pass on and teach and hold other people accountable for, which they might also feel like, hey, this is great. Like, I need this in my life. And I think that's why looking at the business models that are out there, maybe part of what I'm getting at when I'm starting to do this, especially the TikTok live stuff you see behind me, is trying to understand the human condition and how do we really have a, impact.
Yeah. And, it's funny how you say, like, you're writing stuff down so you kind of know where you're kind of drifting off and figure that out. I don't know if you've seen or read this book, but Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. He actually tells you to go through that entire process, like write down every 15 minutes of what it is that you do. It's literally called a time audit. So you could catch yourself where you're kind of wasting your time, whether it be scrolling or odd jobs that you don't need to do yourself, because you're trying to value your time as much as possible to make sure that you're doing income producing activities as much as possible. And one, you could try to figure out how to take away those distractions that's leading us to, like what you said, a society that's constantly like, in the midst of it, just being, taken away from their actual, day-to-day stuff by what's on a device. Like, that's a very addictive thing to have. To understanding, like, okay, well, I'm doing that, let me adjust it. Like, one of the things that I actually do now myself is, like, I put my phone on do not disturb, like, all day long, because
You must not have kids.
Well, I mean, I have two kids, so it's like that's a totally different situation on its own.
When you have teenagers, every 5 minutes there's something to be done.
Yeah. So, like, I've taken those strides because I myself have caught been like, I start scrolling through X or through Facebook or whatever, and then what ends up happening, you start thinking about what they're posting and their success, and oh my god, like, that's kind of like better than what I've done, and it kind of puts you in a bad spot, right? So it's like you need to disconnect from those kinds of things so that you can move forward and start subtracting the distractions from your life in order to be able to find out what you're really trying to do. Like, even 2 weeks ago, I literally went completely blank. I'm pulling away from everything. I'm not even opening up my laptop. I'm like, I need to pull back and really see where things are going to kind of move in the direction things are going to go, and remove all those kinds of distractions so you can have a better focal point of what you need to do.
Yep, for sure. And Dan Martell's book is been circulated quite a bit in our network. Thanks to Josh Nelson, who recommended it to me as well when I was looking for a weight fitness training structure. He suggested him, and so it had nothing to do with the book, but he's got quite a fitness routine that I was looking at to try and somewhat copy. But I think reality is that we're all stuck into this time warp of trying to get the best 8 hours that we can without trying to overdo it, right? So the hustle mentality is now past. I think, look, Gary Vee was my first podcast guest, and the hustle stuff back then was on full tilt and everybody was hustle. Now it's more, well, it's hustle, but it's think what you can do to have a real experience of life at the same time, especially if you have family and kids. Like, hustle doesn't matter to them, all they want, well, my daughter wants, is to make sure that I'm around and make breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and give rides and be part of her social life to make sure she's at the right parties. But I'm just saying, like, I think we're all kind of coming to the conclusion is like, what is it that makes us excited? Exactly. And that's another thing, right? So sure, you can hustle all you want, but that's going to run out of steam. At some point you'll be like, what am I hustling for? Now, people like my wife who have a corporate entity, she hustles in the city and hustles back and gets on a bus for 2 hours. I'm like, I have no idea how people still do this life, right? We've left this as entrepreneurs. We see that as like something that we can't even fathom. But I guess the question becomes, what can you wake up and be excited for? Which is a whole other thing, right?
Yeah, I agree.
I used to say, can I wake up and be Christmas every single day? And I don't know, or Hanukkah, or whatever things that you pleasure from a holiday standpoint that would give you the most amount of happiness. But I don't know if that really makes sense anymore. Because what I'd rather do is wake up and know that people who I've worked with are doing amazingly better. And that's a whole different sort of set of responsibilities. It's not dealing with companies that are looking for me to perform like a stage monkey and make sure that their Facebook ads are maximized every penny. I mean, or most leads or whatever, but it's more about like someone that consciously thinks to come to you and say, I need some help, and I know you're going to help me, and I know it's going to be worth my time to work with you, and I'm willing to listen, and I'm hoping that together we can solve my challenges. And that to me is becoming more valued as I've gotten older, which is that I've been able to share some wisdom that just because I've been doing stuff for a long time, and it doesn't really matter what industry, as I said, I certainly think most industries are the same. It comes down to, basic cost per hour, excuse me, stuff where how do you outsource, and how do you right source those people into the right positioning, and how do you then systematize it, and then how do you use all the 13 different variations I have in my book of systems and structure and coordinating all these things. That's just inherent, like you just know it after a while. It's like learning how to swim or play guitar, or you just how do you make a G chord? Oh, duh. Or how do you do this lead? Oh, duh. Or how do you swim a backstroke? You just know it. And so someone asks you, and you don't have to. It's not physically trying to explain it. It's more of a, well, you're going to have to learn this repertoire of activities to base all of the things upon. And it's funny that the last client I worked with this week, their big challenge was okay, they've gotten profit and they made all this money, and now they're going to turn into an e-com business, and they're going to go out and expand and everything. And now it's, well, I got to let people go, and how do I do, how do I transition people? And so there's a lot of other things in business that I never really realized that I've done, and hired and fired hundreds of people. And so I'm just like, okay, well, let's go through that process, right? So it becomes more of a life experience as well. And whether that's the business side, the marketing side, the P&L side, the system side, it's interesting to get up in the morning and say, oh, how do I impact a more relevant crowd? Sometimes to that degree, I look at that as from the beginning of our conversation, where I started, hey, where would I go? Like, should I do SaaS? Should I do consulting? Should I do local businesses? Well, it's exciting to work with people who actually want to listen and have something that they really need solved, as opposed to, I think which a lot of agencies get involved in, which is they tend to sort of stand there and just take punishment because performance issues, because we're all in this game of, marketing is really just testing. So we're always just testing things to see if they work better than the other thing, or if it didn't work at all. And that's just how life is in the marketing world.
Yeah, totally agree. Matt, it's been such a pleasure to connect with you, man. I've learned just so much just from this call. So it's been a real hoot, man. I really appreciate you.
Take this recording, turn it into a podcast, send me a copy of it. I'll do the same, and we'll have why not use this content for something positive that can help somebody? That's what I keep going. Any relatively good conversation with decent response rate of like people saying, hey, that would make sense because I'm in zero land, right? I'm trying to get to where you guys are. These are great conversations,
Yeah.
Much like I wish I had and I killed myself. I was thinking about it. If I had just brought with me to Dallas the simple little, Zoom recorders, and just put it on the table, and the wisdom that was being shared there was worth the $1,000 of, payment to go high level for their tickets, which I still can't believe. $4,000 or whatever. It's just absolutely insane.
But that's the thing. Like that's why I like conferences like that. And like, I really haven't been to many. When I was in bodybuilding, I used to go to all the shows, all the conventions, everything like that, and we would just talk with like a whole bunch of different people constantly because of the business that I was in. But when you go to events like that, a lot of times you could glean off of the people on stage, but it's a lot of times the people that are not on stage, the connections that you meet, the conversations that you have, that really make a huge difference in like how, when you come in, to how you leave, right? And I think that that's so vitally important, because like without those connections and without those conversations, I don't think it will be worth it at the end of the day, like to go to a conference like that,
No, it's not. And look, I'm a little bit, again, you got to take me as a sort of an outlier, because obviously I'm speaking at it. I know all the people, and I'm going right to the top dudes and having these conversations. I don't think that happens on the, the people who are newbies. They don't have those conversations. They go there and they're get rah, 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 and they may speak to a few people, but they're really not going to have the in-depth stuff, because there isn't enough like gravitas to have that discussion. It might be a slight discussion, but I'm talking like, we're getting into the weeds. An hour and a half with me and Keaton was amazing. Just to have that conversation, even though I just had him on my podcast, we still went into another hour and a half of just sitting there, and it went on like it was like 8:30. We're sitting there. Aren't we supposed to be somewhere? And it was just so fascinating. So anyways, we'll leave it at that. And again, send me a copy of this. You can cut it up. I'll cut it up for you. I've got guys who do this on my team, as you probably do. And we could probably take a lot of nuggets, both of us, out of this and put it back into our networks. And certainly I'm happy to do another conversation about my trials and tribulations of going the years of whipping the horse of the agency into shape, and the days Chase and I spent, in purgatory dealing with difficult clients, and the stories of how we built a white label agency and had our own conference in Mexico, and again, all the funny things that went on that are not safe for work consumption, and all the stuff that, you know, was relatively benign at that point. But today I look back and I go, you know, we could have done it faster, but we decided to have a lifestyle business. I didn't want to work like a hustle guy. I wanted to go do the stuff behind me. I wanted my weekends completely free. I wanted my weeknights free to practice. I had 2 kids growing up. Chase wanted to go surfing every day. He had 3 kids. We're like chill. It was a chill business. It was nice and smooth. It went, well, smooth as in everything was like this, but
yeah, of course.
It just grew at a pace that was reasonable, that we didn't, you know, wake up with heart attacks every day. It was more like, okay, let's, you know, just get the shovel and,
you know, keep digging a little bit. Yeah. Awesome.
All right. I gotta go up and make a quick snack for my daughter. I will talk to you at some point very soon.
Awesome, Matt. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you.
All right, brother.